He's getting a free hit at this one. No one really expects it. But if he was to win this game, you might as well build a statue of him and put it outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Where do you want your statue, Igor? Tim Shield's in no doubt. He knows a thing or two as well about being in charge of Spurs. He feels that bar set very high for the new short-term boss, Igor Tudor. First up for him, the North London derby. So how might he set up his side for this crunch game? Well, the evidence suggests it will be a three at the back. It's something actually that Thomas Frank had tried towards the end of his time in charge. And if you look back at Tudor's managerial career in the top 5 European leagues, he started games with three at the back on 120 occasions. That is the bit in red. Only 4 times has he used a back four. That little sliver there were the 4 times he used 4 at the back. Let's drill down a little bit further and see which system he's likely then to employ at Spurs. The most common one that Tudor has utilised is a 3-4-2-1. He has used that 87 times in the top 5 leagues. Who might that benefit in the Spurs side? Maybe Xavi Simons would prefer playing inside as one of 2 number 10s, maybe. And if he decides to go with 2 strikers, 3-5-2, he's played on 16 occasions. What about Randal Kolo Muani? He played under Tudor at Juventus, sometimes on his own up front, other times as part of a front 2. He's yet to score a Premier League goal, but got 5 in 11 under Tudor at Juve. It's unlikely the new head coach will be in North London for a long time. He's initially joined until the end of the season, with 12 Premier League games left. The longest he has spent in charge of a club was actually right at the beginning of his managerial career. 70 games he spent in charge of #Split. It's been fewer than 50 everywhere else he has been since then. He joined Juve in March. This was his latest managerial appointment, but was sacked in October after just 7 months in charge. He's here for a short time and a good time. Don't know, we'll find out.
Yes, maybe not a long time. Matt, this is a fascinating appointment. As someone who we know has got a soft spot for Spurs, what do you make of it?
We don't know, which is a crazy thing to say because he hasn't managed in the Premier League. That's not to say that he won't be a success. It's just to say that we don't know a huge amount about him at the moment. We can obviously see that he's a firmly experienced manager. He's got lots of credibility behind him in Europe. But it won't matter too much about him. I think it's still the players. Of course, he's coming in, but it's still now the same group of players that need to maybe be managed differently to get the best out of them. It'll be interesting to see how he goes about it, what his management style will be. Will he go in there and be a disciplinarian? Because if you listen to some of the statements and some of the noise coming out of the club, they want to compete more in performances and they want to stabilise on the pitch. What does that say for the previous manager? Does that mean that performances were too up and down? Well, they were because they weren't getting enough results. So it seems to me that the football club in Tottenham Hotspur have looked at him and gone, he's a safe pair of hands until the end of the season, when we can hand it off to maybe Poch if he wants to come back. So, look, there's 12 huge cup finals for Tottenham. It does seem crazy that they could get relegated this season. It's bonkers when you think about it. So what Spurs need to do and what Igor Tudor needs to do is he needs to go in there from day one, get the boys doing the basics and the team doing the basics really well. You look at Manchester United, the upturn they've had since Michael Carrick's gone in. There's going to need to be something along those lines at Tottenham.
He needs the buy-in from the players straight away, though, doesn't he? Because we saw some of that sort of fractious relationship with Thomas Frank towards the end. You know, those scenes on the pitch that time, I know this was a while ago now, but when Van der Ven and Jed Spence sort of seemed to ignore the manager, you got Christian Romero, their captain, coming out and, you know, criticising the club effectively. So it feels like he's got to kind of hit the ground running, yes, with results, but also with the buy-in from the players and that relationship.
I think he's got to go in on day one and lay it down, put the line down very firmly, and it's going to be done his way. The players will have to get on with it. Look, I've never been one that is in any way, shape or form happy with players coming out on social media and having an opinion about the football club. I don't believe that should happen at any level of football, but it has happened. So, look, he's got a tough job to do. It's a really, really difficult job. They've still got Champions League football as well to maybe distract them from the Premier League. But let's not get away from the fact that the most important thing for Tottenham Hotspur to do is to stay in the Premier League this season. And then you look at it, that happens, there's a huge rebuild in the summer again.
I mean, it's 16th in the Premier League, 5 points above West Ham and above the bottom three at the moment. What, realistically, we heard what Tim Sherwood was saying there, but what for you is a sort of good end to the season for Spurs?
Progress in the Champions League, obviously, but let's look away from that. That Spurs should be finishing and competing for the top 6 in the league every year with the money that they've spent, with the players that they have, with the infrastructure commercially, with everything that football club is, but they're not. So there's been a disconnect somewhere along the way. I look at it from the outside in and look at it as a football fan. It seems to me that the team that's on the pitch and the hierarchy, they need to reconnect with the supporters. The supporters are disgruntled at the moment. Yes, they're disgruntled maybe because tactics that the previous manager had used, but I think when you're a Tottenham fan and speaking to Spurs fans, there's a certain way that you expect the game to be played. There's certain sort of DNA that you expect to see on the pitch. Spurs fans haven't seen that, and they've obviously had enough of it. They made their feelings well known. The previous manager is gone. What they need to do now is back the new manager coming in. But it's the players still that have to do it. And this is what's crazy, that the manager will have all of the pressure, but it's the players that need to go out and perform.
And not to look too far ahead, because look, it's a really, really important few months. But you talk about the fan sentiment there. I imagine fans, it will be music to their ears hearing the thought of Mauricio Pochettino returning to North London.
Yeah, be music to my ears as a Tottenham fan. Of course it would. Yeah, I think he understands the club. He gets it. He's been there. He's probably got unfinished business. If I'm honest with you, I was working at the football club when he was manager. Great guy, fantastic around the place. Look, he's got another job which everyone has to be respectful of until the end of the World Cup. But I would imagine that the Spurs hierarchy will be doing everything that they possibly can to get him back to London and back to Tottenham Hotspur.
And you said before about the remainder of their Premier League games now being like cup finals, every single one of them. I mean, Arsenal next on the weekend. What a first match in charge for this guy.
Yeah, it's somewhat, Tim said it there, somewhat of a free hit, because crazy, but Arsenal will go into this game, even though it's at Tottenham, as heavy favourites. So there won't be any expectation. I think what Spurs need to do is be really resolute without the ball and attack with pace, with power, with quality when they get their moments in the game and take them. If he wins this game, all of a sudden, the gloom around the football club lifts. And Tim said it, he can ruin Arsenal's season, which is crazy. They've been going so well in the league. They've had a little bit of a blip, obviously. They'll be hoping that this is their point at which now it changes and they get back to winning ways. But yeah, I'm massively excited to watch this game.
You and me both. Right, well, what a first